Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're at a place called Steventon. It's about 6 miles to the southwest of Basingstoke in Hampshire. And we're going to be doing a roughly 5.5 mile circular walk to the north, taking in the hamlets of Ashe, Deane and Steventon. We'll be seeing 3 churches, hopefully the source of the River Test, more of that later, and some stunning countryside. Now Steventon is probably best known for being the birthplace of Jane Austen, but we'll be having a look at the village itself towards the end of the walk. Now I'm filming middle of March. It is a glorious spring day. The sun is out, there's blue sky, bit of a wind, so we're going to have to keep going, but it should be perfect conditions for walking. So do come along with us. Well, I've parked my car at the church in Steventon, which is just behind me here. It's the Church of St Nicholas, a 13th century church built around about 1200 actually, and apart from limited alterations in the 13th, 15th and 19th centuries, it hasn't changed too much. There were some major restorations in the 19th century when the spire was added. It's got an eyeless chancel and nave, later extended to enclose the former west tower, and a marvellous hexagon slate covered spire. I believe it's got 3 bells, with one possibly dated as early as 1380. And indeed Jane Austen herself came here every Sunday for the first 25 years or so of her life to hear her father preach. He was George, the rector here, and I see just going through the churchyard there's a memorial down here to James Austen. That's Jane Austen's brother. Well, let's have a peep inside. Oh, the first thing to spot is the looks like a mass style outside. Now the good news, folks, is that I have found the light switch, so hopefully there's going to be enough light in here. That's a rather magnificent font. Gosh, you can just imagine Jane Austen coming to worship here. Look at that mural up there. Isn't that terrific? Some beautiful colours in here. And a quite stunning stained glass window. And here on the right there's a memorial to the Reverend William Knight, and then over here, what's that? Sacred memory of Anne Austen, wife of James Austen. Wow, it really is quite beautiful. And there, the Reverend James Austen, who, as it says, succeeded his father George Austen as rector here. It's full of history. And then I've just spotted something down here. Fragment of cross shaft Saxon believed to be 9th century, found at Steventon Manor, which is just next door. Wow. And now, just in this little fireplace here, I'll try and read through. In the back it says there's some pump furniture. These original parts were from the well that stood in the backyard of the Austen Rectory. Now, we'll be seeing where that building was located right at the end of the video, so bear that in mind. Well, what a delightful church. Well, I'm going to head out straight into the countryside proper. and hopefully we're going to get some superb views today. Now, next to the church, just on my right, is Steventon Manor, which has got an incredible history. Now, I think there's been at least 4 manor houses here that have stood on the site over the years. The first manor was Norman and burnt down in 1185 when it was replaced by a new farmhouse. The original site then became a farmyard, and it's now a clearing in the woods. A Tudor house was then built here in 1560. Now, from 1794, the Steventon estate was owned by Jane Austen's brother, Edward, and it was sold to the Duke of Wellington in 1854, who in turn sold it on in 1877. Indeed, in 1877, a large mansion was then built in the grounds closer to the church, and the Tudor farmhouse was converted to stables. In 1932, the main house was damaged by fire and demolished, and a new manor house was constructed around the old Tudor house, and the remains of the Victorian house were converted into a service unit, and it's that that is the core of the Steventon Manor today. So the larger manor house was actually requisitioned by the Civil Defence Force in the Second World War. It then became derelict and was demolished in 1969, 1970. But by 1987, the estate surrounding Steventon Manor was divided and sold into multiple ownership. I hope you followed all that. As I said, it had quite a complex history. Let's get on with the walk. Just making our way down through Steventon Park. Glorious spring day, it's beautiful. Now I'm just going to point out a building in the far distance just behind me here, which is the Steventon slightly newer rectory, but I'll explain a little bit more about that towards the end of the walk, but I'll just point it out now because you get a much better view from it from here. Well, we're continuing to make our way northwards. We went underneath a railway line. I think it was the main South West line, London Waterloo to Southampton, I think. And then through a delightful little bit of woodland, Kimbers Copse. And well, at the moment we're going through, well, there's a sort of designated path along the side of a hill. The reason I'm panting, it was slightly uphill. Now, as I've come to a little pit stop, I'm not sure when this video will come out, but it's the first video that I've filmed since Crufts, so I thought I'd give you a little update as to how the dogs got on. Logan, he was competing in the Kennel Club Good Citizens Special Pre-Beginners Obedient Stakes Final. Bit of a mouthful. There were something like 27 finalists, I think. We weren't expecting great things, and I was hoping for a top half finish. He did a very nice heel work, but we had a bit of a disaster in the recall. It wasn't Logan's fault, it was all down to handler error, but we beat a few, and he came away with his finalist rosette. But the day before, Monty, our oldest dog, he was a member of the South and Southwestern team in the Inter-Regional Obedience Championships. The team came second, which was fantastic, and it was great to see Monty on the green carpet at Crufts. He's handled by my wife Bex, so he came back with the rosette. And then finally, little Fiver, he was in the breed Whippet showing. Unfortunately, I was so engrossed in the obedience competition that I missed his class, but I wasn't too worried, because although it was great that he qualified, he was really going to go there to make up the numbers. But it was good experience for him, and he had a good day out. So all in all, it wasn't a bad Crufts for the boys. I'm now just going through Ashe Park, and behind me is Ashe Park House, although you can't really see much of it because it's quite well hidden and private. But the oldest parts of the house date between 1580 and 1600, and Jane Austen was a regular visitor here in the 1790s, and she mentioned it in her letters. The Portal family lived here in the 1760s all the way through to the 1880s. The house itself was enlarged in 1770 and extended and refurbished in 1865. And the grounds were landscaped, or re-landscaped should I say, in the 1990s, and a polo centre was established in 1995. Well, as I said right at the beginning, I was hoping to find the source of the River Test. Hopefully you can hear me above the wind. It is quite blowy here. Now I'm in the corner of a field. There's the B3400 just to my left, and a little minor road to my right. Now, as far as the source is concerned, well, if you look at an old map, it shows the source at a spring in a field just to the north of here. A current Ordnance Survey map shows it as much larger, and indeed an aerial map shows it looks like the spring has been dug out and a lake made with an island, but unfortunately all that's on private land. But if you look closer at that Ordnance Survey map, it shows what looks like a stream running into the lake from the south. So I investigated further, and a detailed map shows it as a drain. But hang on a second, it looks like that drain is fed from a pond on the south side of the B3400, which in turn is linked to a mini drain underneath Burley Lane. And that is linked to a little pond that's just behind me here, and there it is. So technically, does water from this pond or spring make its way to the official source of the test in the field on the other side of the road, and then continue its course along the test itself? So is this unofficially the source of the River Test? Well, I know that rivers have a number of sources, but seeing as I don't think we're going to be able to see the official source of the River Test, which is a shame because we've seen the source of the River Meon and the source of the River Itchen, the other two great Hampshire chalk streams. But we're going to take this and bag this as unofficially our source of the River Test. Well, I've just crossed over the B3400. At one stage, I believe that was once the old main road from London to Exeter. So I'm now heading towards Ashe as a helicopter goes over, and behind me here is the quite fantastic Ashe House. Isn't that wonderful? And it dates from the 16th century, and Jane Austen often used to stay here as a guest of the Lefroys. Some lovely properties down here. I think this is the old schoolhouse. built in 1872 and then enlarged in 1888. And isn't that gorgeous on the left there? Now, our next destination is the church at Ashe, which is just through here. Isn't this quite exquisite in the spring sunshine? The Holy Trinity and St Andrew Church. It's a 19th century structure. There was a major rebuilding in 1878 and then 1879, and it replaced a much older church that was on the verge of collapse. It's got a chancel, nave, vestry, south porch and west bell turret. I think there's one bell in there, and it still has a 14th century piscina, I think, in the south wall of the chancel, but very little left of the original church. And outside there is a memorial to Robert Portal in the churchyard, one of the few survivors of the charge of the Light Brigade, which was what, 25th of October 1854. Okay, in we go. Now I should point out, normally this church is locked, and if you want to go in, you get the key from a cottage nearby. There are some instructions by the door. And I found the lights as well. Rather magnificent font. Isn't that beautiful there? And just slowly panning round and make our way down. Beautiful stained glass window at the far end, and there's the organ tucked away there. But this church has got a little gem, and you could easily miss it. Just to the side here you can see there's a little iron door. Now what I'm going to do is, I've got a little flashlight, so I'll grab hold of it. See if you can see this. How am I going to do this? If I put the flashlight there, let's have a look inside. Can you see that? It's a little robin, and there's a fantastic story to this. Now, when the church was being rebuilt in the 19th century, a robin would come in and share the workman's lunch, and it made a nest out of the shavings indoors. Anyway, the workmen fed it and protected it whilst the little ones were hatched and flew away. But before they left, a carpenter made this little cupboard in the wall for the robin, and indeed created a carving on the bird on its nest, and there she sits. What an absolute treasure. Well, what a lovely little robin that was. Well, just by the church there's a footpath that goes west, which isn't on our actual route, but I've just wandered down there to look just over my right shoulder. You can just about see the official source of the River Tess, but this is as near as we're going to be able to get to it, because I believe it's actually on private land. There it is over there. As you can see, it does look as though it's been enlarged to make a rather impressive lake, and I think there's some geese out there as well, looking quite beautiful, and the sun reflecting off the water there. So there we go, that's the official source of the River Tess. The Dave and Logan source is a little bit further south to the left. Well, just a little update as to where we're going next. Ashe Church just on my right. We're now going to start heading eastwards towards our next destination, Deane. Wow, what a breathtaking view. So this is looking eastwards. and we're going to head across this field along that path into those woods into the far distance. Beautiful. And this is our third church of the walk, the church at Deane, the Church of All Saints, built in 1818 in very much Gothic style to replace an earlier medieval church. There's an aisleless chancel and nave. It's virtually a single cell with a western tower and south porch. The chancel has a buttress on each side, and the tower is of 3 stages and has a crocketed pinnacles and a crenellated parapet and flat buttresses set back from the corners. I think it's got 5 bells. Interesting to see the exterior looks to be wholly covered in cement. We can't go in, it's locked. Oh well, 2 out of 3 wasn't too bad, was it? Well, right next to the church is Deane House, built in 1786. And Jane Austen often visited her friends, the Harwoods, here. Indeed, it was here that Jane danced with Tom Lefroy at a ball. I think she rather liked him, but alas, he married somebody else. Okay, we're now starting to head southwards, so Deane Church on my right, and just over on the left is the Deane Rectory. And George Austen, Jane's father, lived here between 1764 and 1768. He was the rector at Deane and Steventon, and then he moved from here on to the Steventon Rectory later. Well, continuing our southwards journey, just crossed the B3400 again, just past a restaurant. It used to be called the Deane Gate Inn. It was an old coaching inn. I think it closed in 2011 and it became a restaurant 2015, I think. It was a beautiful white thatched cottage just here. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so we're going to continue southwards, and we'll shortly be going to be taking up a path along the Wayfarer's Walk. Whew, another little uphill bit finished. So we've been coming along Wayfarer's Walk, which is a 71-mile long distance path from Walbury Hill in Berkshire all the way to Emsworth in Hampshire, and little footpath sign here, crossroads. We're now going to start heading in a sort of southwesterly direction alongside Ashe Park Copse. Well, we're very much on the homeward leg now. That's the footpath that we've come down. Lovely to see snowdrops very much out in full at the moment. And we're now going to go back underneath the railway line. This is the Steventon Arch. The actual tunnel goes through a man-made embankment. It's actually quite a low tunnel considering the height of the embankment itself. Just coming through the village, there's a telephone box with no telephone, but it looks as though it's got a lot of information about Jane Austen inside. Let's go and have a look. Action. Well, there we go. Looks like it's like a little library. Some flowers down in the corner. And then, yeah, a little bit about Jane Austen there on the side. Wow, what a sweet little village green with the seat round the tree and the daffodils out in full bloom as well. So it's a great time of year to be out walking, it really is. Well, this is the last thing that I want to look at on the walk, and in some ways it's probably the most important, because out in this field was once an old rectory. It was the birthplace of Jane Austen. And Jane actually lived here from 1775 to 1801, after which she moved to Bath. And it was in this field that there was a rectory. As I mentioned before, her father was the rector at the church here for 44 years. And Jane's brother, James, took over the rectory in 1801, but sadly it was demolished in 1823, 1824, and there's no visible signs of it, apart from an old pump and a blocked off well, which you can just see over there. It's kind of fenced off. Unfortunately, it's private land here, so we can't get any nearer. And the pump was used by the family. It was in the backyard of the rectory, and just to the left, it's behind this hedge here. I'll see if I can get a picture of it. There's a tall lime tree, and that was planted by James, and he remained the rector of Steventon, following on from his father from 1805 to 1819. And in 1823, just before the old rectory was demolished, a new one, which if I gradually just turn around, it's up on the hill here over there. We actually got a better sight of it right at the beginning, if you remember. This one was built by Jane Austen's brother Edward Austen Knight, who owned land here for his son, the Reverend William Knight. So it's now privately owned. But just going back to the field here, incredible to think that the house that was once here was where Jane wrote Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. Well folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment, and do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. We've had another super walk today in beautiful spring weather, sunshine. It's been quite glorious, and one of us has already decided to take a nap. So until we meet again, thanks for watching, and cheerio.